Not sure what's happening with the other person here, but I'm not going to delay any longer, like on the idea of at least speaking with you. And we can kind of progress forward. At least you will know it, and hopefully it doesn't stop us from being able to play in the future. Um, so effectively, this is kind of going to be my normal like interview that I tend to do with people after we run a session zero. Just because it is right now just me and you. Right now, these are just my bots inside of Discord. So like right below me, you can see me seeks. I have them currently muted, but when I unmute them, I use them as like atmospheric music. Just try to set me seeks so you can't really hear it, but it's like subconsciously able to be heard. And that's meant to again set like kind of like a ambiance of the situation that we're kind of in. So like if things are kind of like in a horror situation, there might be some creepy music in there. Um, Right now, it's just like a casual studio Ghibli.
Okay, nice.
So when I unmute it, it might be pretty loud. I keep it at like 15 to 20% to again have it like very barely audible, but it doesn't like stop you from being able to hear people speak.
Okay, yep. I just turned it down a little bit. It's perfect.
Excellent. Um, Sometimes I use another bot that's actually called Hydra. And Hydra kind of does like a little different setup where that will be a little bit more like kind of in your face music. For instance, like sometimes when combat comes in, I will bust out Hydra. And that's like a little bit more in your face kind of a song to like remind you like tension should be rising at this point kind of thing.
Yeah, like something's happening. Makes sense.
But same general idea, like both of those bots and all of the other people in the channel, you can right click on their name to adjust volume. And that is a huge thing for sometimes somebody will be a little bit quieter one session to another, and it's good to be able to adjust them on the fly. Sometimes the bot is absurdly loud. So just to know how to modify that is definitely a clutch little aspect of using Discord, depending on how much you are kind of used to it.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with it.
Excellent. So what we do here for most things, a lot of this is going to end up being things that I'll post to the There Be Dragons chat that is down below us, just the text chat. And these will be things that I end up pinning here, so everybody has kind of quick access to them. And they just tend to be different things that are kind of useful information. Like this first one that I'm going to send out is just like a new player survey. I kind of have some of that information from you. Takes about a minute to fill out though, but it's kind of helpful for me to kind of confirm anything special. I don't know, special extra little bit of information, but it takes about a minute to fill out.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's helpful too. Just coming back, like a week later, you can just glance over it quickly or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like if you stop by and kind of like just kind of check the server like once a week, I won't necessarily have new things pinned, but it is definitely the type of thing where, you can easily kind of mute the actual server notifications kind of thing, and when you check, you'll see a little bit of extra information that anything pertinent to this game will show up in that chat. It tends to be most of my players chat more inside of their campaign chat. There's very few people, honestly, who use that kind of welcome chat, which is effectively kind of the group chat here. So that first one, that's just that little survey. It takes about 30 seconds or a minute to fill out. Some of the biggest things, I think I already had you say that you're Eastern. That's one thing that kind of confirms that when I use the time, we're on the same time frame or time zone. Because I try to reference that I'm Eastern Standard. Uh, but it's the type of thing like having those little things can also help for me to remind people like, hey, make sure to check your time with Roll20 because that will tell you the proper time for anything that I schedule.
Oh, right. Yeah, I guess especially with that, it could be people from all over the world.
Yeah, like I have. I think probably about like 90% of the server is Eastern. We have a good chunk of people kind of Central Standard, a few people out in California. I have one person in Hawaii, two people in Sweden, one person in Germany, and one person in England. Um, but probably about like 15 to 20% of the server is kind of outside of continental US.
Oh, nice. Okay, I just finished the survey.
Excellent. So this one that I just posted there, that is something from Monty Cook Games, and I don't even modify it because it is so well done. I don't think there's any reason to kind of try to change this. That is a different kind of way to feel for what I would call soft and hard stopping points. But in general, the idea, like if you use color coding things, green is move forward, yellow is probably use less details and let's move along, red is let's just skip over this. Because there are certain things, like in my games, where a lot of things are pretty dark and it's meant to be uh, I love to challenge like a gray area of what is the right choice. There's never a clear this is the correct choice. There is a scale of bad choices or like a scale of better choices. So most things are not going to be very clear cut, like this is a good person we're trying to help here. It's usually somebody who has their good and bad because I want the world to feel alive, and I don't think people are good or bad. People are a scale of good and bad.
Right.
Even the most evil person you should come across probably has pretty good concepts to them. But they've just lost sight of the cost. That tends to be like where you get into like Kantian morality of does the actual end justify the means? And those are what I love to play this game about, where the player choice really matters because there's so much room to see if you help this person, the world's going to change based on that choice. So that consent form, a lot of those things, never going to come up in my games. I pretty much will always, at best, fade to black when sex comes up as an issue. Most of my NPCs are far more concerned about survival than they are about getting hit on. So
Right.
having somebody who's trying to pick up NPCs in a tavern, most of these people are trying to survive. This is like, to me, this is grim, dark medieval fantasy. If you take the medieval ages when people were dying because they can't take baths, add magic, and that's what most of these people exist inside of. But that one in particular is a good point to feel out those things. And also, I think it's important for people to know that I am concerned about where their barriers are, so we don't specifically like walk all over something that is troubling to one person or another. There are cards in the game that I have activated. I don't know how well they actually work versus a home game. In home games, it's so easy to just have an X card that kind of like says it all. Um, yeah, see, I don't even think that doesn't even pop up the stop card if I throw one out on the table. So I'm not sure how much it works. But like if you go over to the macros bar in Roll20, it's in the top right under collection. You can click on that and you'll see there's a deck, and one of those is the safety deck. There's simply
Okay.
three cards inside of there.
All right. I see that.
If you click on one of those cards, if you send a card to the chat, can you try that and actually see? It'll actually help me as well.
You see, I see the decks. I guess I just
Do you,
have to type something.
do you see one that says safety deck and then it
Yep.
should say number three?
Yep. I see that.
If you click on that deck, I think where it says add, maybe? Mine, yeah, show.
Okay. Sure.
If you click on the card, what happens now?
Oh, I can like drag it out. Um.
Okay, I can see the green card, my bot cannot. So yeah, that does work exactly how I was hoping it was. That is a way for people to show me effectively this is fine. Keep going. I think green is kind of useless. It is there for a reason. It helps, but in the long run, the yellows and the reds are the real important ones. Another way that I tell people to use those is like that deck is an awesome addition. Roll 20 did in the last like month or two. But like calling for a break and then messaging me is one of the best ways to kind of like skip over something. Um, because a break makes sure that I am free and not busy when you're trying to get a hold of me. But like messaging me on Discord just privately works. Messaging me inside of Roll 20 works. Either of those, it's easy enough for me to miss. But the idea of taking an actual break where we'll take like a 10-15 minute restroom break, and then having that conversation privately, is the most successful way when we can't actually see each other. But that's just kind of like along that same line of just what that form covers is some of the more like kind of risky conversation points that might come up. In general, it's probably most useful for the actual phobias I find. Because, like, I will describe stuff like spiders and never really expect somebody who's actually arachnophobic.
Oh yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I
One
just
of the
preached
camp Gotcha. One of the campaigns like has actual like dying of dehydration. And I had somebody who says,
that.
yeah, that's a hard stop. I would have never assumed
Yeah,
describing dying of dehydration as like, a point that you don't want. I could understand like certain aspects of things, this or that. But that's one of those things where it's really important to have that because there are things where, yeah, for some people, that's a no go.
yeah,
So it's kind of interesting to like feel some of those out, and that's where again I like applaud Monty Cook Games for releasing that, making it public. Is freaking awesome.
yeah. A lot of those, it's just something you might not even think about.
So this next one, this is just a link to a token stamp generator. When we have characters created inside of Roll 20, pretty much all you will end up doing is going to the journal in the top right section. Looks like a little bit of a newspaper. I think it is two from the left for you as a player. You should see like the chat icons, which is pretty common for people with texting and like messengers, and then the newspaper. And under the newspaper, you'll see a couple of headings. I believe you'll see characters. If you click on that, you should see the actual characters that just right now are player A through F. And then like allies, you'll see handouts as another kind of thing that's below that, and kind of spells inside of the characters as well. But effectively, what that token generator is for is when it comes time for you to finish your character, you'll basically take one of those characters, and I'm actually going to give you access to character A right now. And once you have access, you can edit character A. And you'll go in there and you'll change the name to whatever you name your character. And then to the left of where it says name, it gives you drop a file from your art library or computer under avatar. And that token that we grab from token stamp generator, that'll go there. And it's effectively just a circle, so your character fits nicely into the squares of the battle map.
Okay.
But if you're under the journal right now, you should now see character A, or
Oh,
player A under characters, and you can edit them. But of course, you don't like have all of that yet.
okay. Yep, I see. It's got the character sheet,
Yeah,
bio.
so we won't do character sheet at all here. I do character sheets all on D&D Beyond, um, and that's a huge preference of mine, almost exclusively because they allow me to save PDFs. I pretty much save people's characters at the start of sessions, so I always have access to it, including if there's any sort of issues. Oh man, what? I think I've run almost 250 games online since
Wow.
COVID. And I think I've had one session where everything was kind of crashed and we had to play pen and paper style. And it was definitely very useful to basically be able to send everybody their PDFs of like, this is your character. Bam, we can still keep playing.
Yeah, that's nice to have just like a backup.
So I've already got you inside of the game. That was the next. Oh, I should still drop the link though to pin it. My bad. The next one's just going to be the actual invite for the game. Again, my own thinking, like offhand, this isn't nearly as important because you are already inside of the game. But the next one I'm going to post is the actual link for D&D Beyond.
Okay, yep. I have an account on there.
Gotcha. So what that will do when you actually join my campaign is, unless you've purchased materials from D&D Beyond, when you join my actual game, you'll be able to access everything that I've purchased. So like if you're just on a free account right now and you've bought nothing, you're just using the SRD, which is the system
Okay.
reference document,
Right.
which is usually limited to like one class, or one subclass from each class. And I think it's like three or four of the seven starting races. So once you join my campaign, you'll have access to everything. Um, I'll go over more information on character creation shortly here, like how I actually kind of like jump through those hoops. But that's the actual like link for it. When you go to click on it now, or if you've already clicked it, it will ask you, do you want to join with this character? And it'll show you some of the characters you already have made.
Oh, okay.
Or would you like to join with a new character? If you join with a character you have made, it's the character you already made. If you create a new character, you'll have access to everything that I've already like opened up. But if you join with a character you've made, you can edit it and you will have access to things that I've purchased. So it kind of can defeat some of the purpose to join with a character you've already made. Um, but creating a new character inside of this game is a good way for you to, I mean, for one, simply just explore some of the other content that you don't have access to. But that link is always useful. For instance, if you have a character die and you need to rejoin the campaign with a new character, you kind of need that link, if you don't kind of jump through D&D Beyond's hoops properly.
Okay, yeah, yeah. See a bunch of the races I didn't see before.
Yeah, so most of those are from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, I think. That might be the wrong name of the actual book, but regardless, like that's one of the things where I've purchased most of the other races. Again, I'll kind of go over a little bit more character creation like shortly here, but in general for character creation, I say PHB is like races, PHB classes and subclasses are all 100% go for it. We use variant human. My world is predominantly human worlds. As far as adventures go, you all are pretty well welcome to play whatever you would like, but anything that is not Player's Handbook, I need you to talk to me about and effectively get it approved. And part of that approval is simply me saying, if you play something that is not PHB, it's entirely likely that I will have to balance it at some point, um, to like fit better with the group. And a lot of that is because if one person wants to be a power gamer and the rest of the group is trying to casually game, it's very easy for somebody to like choose something from like Tasha's, where the power creep is really, really strong. And if the person who goes for Tasha's wants to be all about combat, but everybody else is casual, I can either kill everybody who's casual pretty regularly, or the person who went for Tasha's is going to never be challenged. And if it's a question of challenging a power gamer, they probably want to be challenged. They're just with a group who doesn't. And that's where like a lot of the balancing kind of comes in. Is it's not necessarily balancing to nerf you so much as we have to like recognize like, all right, you made a super powerful build, but the rest of your group is not there with you. What do you want to do about it? Do you want to lower the like build that you're in so you can play casually and I can challenge them on that same level? Or do you want to basically try to convince your players, and that's kind of the thing. That's why it ends up always being like nerf the power gamer. It's hard to tell somebody else like you need to be a more strategic player because I don't really deal with telling other people what to do. Like everybody's here to play their own game.
Right.
Um, One of my rules, the two things that I take player agency on, is I want everybody to create an adventurer, and you should have an adventurer who wants to adventure with this party. Those are the only two things where that's where I take your agency. If you want to create somebody who wants to be alone and always adventure alone, awesome. You created an NPC. We're going to retire that person because they are now my NPC. And if you would like to create a new character and actually participate in the campaign, don't make somebody who wants to be alone.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense since it's like a group game.
Exactly. Like the classic rogue archetype, if you want to be a very solo, very quiet and brooding person, awesome. But you should find a reason that these people that you are adventuring with are the exception to the rule. Where these are the people who bring you out of your shell. You don't ever have to talk to my NPCs if you don't want to, but you should talk to this party. Um, I don't like to do anything that stops communication because it's already kind of strained enough being online when we only have voice. Um, but I definitely don't want you to have any reason that you're not communicating with the party.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, with those right there, that's pretty much how we play the game right now. Roll 20 is the virtual tabletop. That's where all the strategy will happen. Effectively, like there's a few different kind of styles of maps that we'll have. If you have like a big city style overhead map like this is usually me trying to show like a general area. And this will kind of fill in over time where I basically like will circle something and tell you this is Barthen's provisions. And you kind of like learn these things like over time. Um, I'm
Oh,
not going to
okay, that's
type it.
cool.
I was just that was terribly, terribly handwritten there.
Yeah,
But
no,
like
that's cool.
this
You
is
can do
kind of a
that.
general overlay. My bad. What were you saying?
Oh, I was saying that's pretty cool. You can just draw on it like that or write on it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. That's part of where Roll 20 is awesome. Their level of we can modify things is incredible. If you look in the top left of your screen, you can also mark on the map. And there's just a little paintbrush. If you click on that paintbrush, it will take you off of the cursor and turn it into a brush. And you'll be able to select the color that you can use, and you can mark stuff on the map as well. I would not count on those type of things being there all the time because on a regular basis, I will modify maps and I will clean stuff up like that, like drawing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I see. I think I just did a circle.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think you just circled like with a pretty small circle over that is the Edermath Orchard. And at some point you will probably meet the person who lives there and learn, oh, this is Darren Edermath. And again, this is kind of like a general view. Usually when we're on a screen like this, oh my bad, I'm on the map level right now. My bad. Jordan just logged back on. So like usually if we are on a map like this, we might drop like a single token and that kind of represents like where the party is. But in the long run, like big maps like this tend to be just like for an actual like feeler. This is the type of map that you all might have. Like if somebody's a cartographer, they might have this on their person. So when you guys are inside of a tavern, you have a map like this to kind of plot and plan and decide like what you might be doing. If you're kind of drawn over into a map like this is a little bit more to the point of where if you have your actual miniature and you drag them out onto the map, this is the type of thing where that tells me you are sitting at that top northwestern stool. And there'll basically be like the actual bartender who is off behind the bar, and you'll see the other people who are kind of around the tavern. Once you're on a map like this is a strategic map. This is where your positioning matters. And it's the type of thing where be weary of moving around really quickly, but at the same time, this is where you do have a little bit more kind of free space to move. In the long run, though, it's the type of thing where I think a lot of things still should be remembered. Like, this is a spoken, like, shared storytelling. You'll kind of feel out groups, but it is the type of thing where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna walk in and approach the bar. Do I see anybody sitting at the bar stools? And I might tell you, yeah, there's three people currently sitting at the bar stools. Two of them are closest to the actual entrance, and one of them is at the furthest end. And I'll do something really quickly to actually like show them. I don't always like place like all of the most like kind of pointless NPCs, but sometimes I'll have a bunch of people kind of sitting around. A tavern like this, I tend to have it filled because it is kind of small. But in the long run, it kind of varies on things, and that's where I feel like there should be kind of a blend between if I show you a map, it's still in general just like saving a little bit of time on the description, not necessarily meant to be this is the have all end all of what this place is, but it's just kind of like a feeler to give people a little bit of room to start to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, it just sets like the mood or gives a good setting.
Yeah. So in general, like if I were to put people on this map, what it really means is alt changes it to a circle. One second. I think you can see that square that I threw up there. So let me create a new page actually. If this were the exact same room, and it's still alt. If this were the same room, it would be like me drawing that rectangle,
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
showing you that there is a bar over here, and that there's another room in the northeast. And then this area in the southeast is like outside of the tavern. So, kind of what that map is meant to say is one, it's meant to look prettier. That's part of why I harvest a lot of maps from outside sources because I think it's important to have nice looking maps, but I don't want people to assume everything that the map maker made actually is something in my world.
Oh, okay. So it's just somewhat of a reference.
Yeah, so like the map that I just showed you is the same map here. You can see that you're walking into a tavern from the southwestern side of the room where the door is. You can see a large bar that's about 20 feet long. There's two people who are sat between that entrance wall and the southwestern side of the bar. And then there's one person at the far north end of the bar. And then the bartender is standing behind the bar. He's a gentleman, probably about late 20s, maybe early 30s, has a straw hat across his head, and he's not actually interacting with his customers. At present, he's sitting across on a stool, seems to have one foot up on on a little like footrest in front of him, and he kind of has his head laid back across the northern side of the bar and just seems to be casually relaxing in this room. You'll hear a little bit of movement and conversation from people in the room off to the northwest of you, and you can see somewhat of a flicker of the light that's where the hearth is heating this room that you all are in. So that's kind of what I was getting at. It's like when you walk into one room, in the long run, it's a different way of drawing things for you to just show you like this is the exact same room as what I drew on that other page. I just like this because it gives you a little bit more of a feel of the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
But again, like that's just roll 20 is just the strategy side of what we're doing. Most of our dice rolling will be done on roll 20 because it's just there, and that's part of what Beyond 20. So Beyond 20 is the link that I just shared there in chat. That is used for anything on your character sheet. If a little red die comes up as you kind of scroll over it, Beyond 20 lets you actually roll that die. And it rolls it over here onto roll 20. So it kind of combines those two resources together into a single source. And it is definitely an awesome little aspect. But what that does is that is a link to just Beyond 20, and it will give you access to whether you use Firefox or Google Chrome. Do you use either of those browsers?
Yep. I just installed the extension for Chrome.
Excellent. So once you have it installed, the extension in Chrome will show up in the top right. You'll see like a little puzzle piece that you can actually look on Beyond 20.
Oh, and pinned it.
Or when, what was that?
Yep. I just pinned it, so it's up there now.
Excellent. Yep. So if you have it pinned, you'll always see that red polyhedron. When you are on roll 20 on the actual dice roller or on the chat screen, in that top right section, if you go to the like chat one, when you're on roll 20's chat, you'll see that same red polyhedron with the white B on it in the bottom right. Either of those let you modify beyond 20. Part of why I mentioned that right away is because there's a few settings that I want to kind of confirm that you have prepared. One of them is basically if you go into either of those, you'll see some options, but you should see an area that says more options. And if you open up the more options, you
Let's
should see a screen kind of like that. The two circles with the arrows are just pointing to the two different locations. You'll see the modification. But type of roll, I like people to always roll twice. And that basically means like if somebody rolls faster than I can actually say roll with advantage or roll with or disadvantage, always roll twice means that you've basically already included it. It always rolls 2d20 every single time you go to roll a d20. And then the other one, which is a few below it, is auto roll damage and crit. If you have that set, if you roll to attack with your short sword, it's basically going to roll 2d20, and then it's going to roll a d6 and add your strength modifier. And if you roll a crit on one of those 2d20, it's going to roll the extra d6. So everything is included in a single click of the button. And while it doesn't seem like it's going to save a lot of time in the long run, those seconds inside of combat are awesome because many hours of time can be spent on what ends up being like 30 seconds of combat in the game.
Okay, nice. Yeah, those I turned on the always roll twice and auto roll damage and crit
Excellent.
already.
Yeah, so those are clutch ones. My bad, I kind of missed that other thing you said.
Oh, I was just saying the auto roll what? Oh, auto roll damage and crit that was already turned on. So I'm good
Excellent.
to go.
Up at the top of that screen, and just anytime you click on those red bees, it shows you an option to whisper rolls to the DM. That is something that is very useful for when we have death saving throws. And when you are at 0 hit points, I like people to whisper death saving throws to me, because I don't like that parties, if they see your death saves, they will ignore the fact that you are dying. It's really, really rough. I hate asking people to switch to whisper for this very reason, but I feel like it's the only solution is to hide death saving throws from the party to make sure that people recognize if somebody is down, you need to try to get to them and help them. Um, so that's one little thing that occasionally will come up, but in the long run, I would say set that to never whisper, and then when you actually go down, it becomes very useful to switch it over to whisper.
Okay. Yep, that's good to remember.
Actually, have a picture of the avatar section for when you're modifying your character as well. I didn't realize I had one of those saved. I think those are the big things on the actual pins. That last one obviously is the PayPal I already sent to you. But that's just kind of how I populate these when I'm doing a session zero. So it'll kind of always be in the channel from now on. But that's kind of like the general gist of things. As far as character creation goes, I like to run these starter campaigns with point buy because it allows a lot more actual growth from characters versus like some of my bigger campaigns. I've run like a few different character creation options, like 4 stats. So, in general, have you gone through point buy when you've made characters for yourself in the past?
No. I want to say I think I just did the allocated one. Let me see.
Point buy can allow you to purchase the standard array, if that's what you mean.
Okay, yep, yep. I did the standard array.
Yeah. So, point buy is a pretty similar situation. It does allow you the opportunity, if you want to be a little bit more of a quote unquote min maxer, that you can start with 15 in 3 stats and 8 in 3 stats. Or you can do something very similar to the actual standard array, where you start with like an actual blend of stats. Um, but that's kind of one of the next steps there. In general, I do rolling for hit points on every level, which includes level 1. Part of that is not necessarily to make people suffer, but it is to kind of accentuate that when you are a low level adventurer, surviving and living is a huge aspect of this game. Everything is really, really easy to die when you are effectively a commoner who is picking up a weapon for the first time. And that's one of those things that I want to make sure that people recognize. I think it is the most fun part about low level campaigns is that this is actually the time where your character is actually kind of like in the nitty gritty life and death situations.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you have to think about your choices very carefully.
So like that last picture there, that kind of shows like the different places where you edit your character with those 2 different top areas. Like once you have a character sheet, kind of leveling up becomes like going to that class area, modifying your hit points, and then you always just want to change your rolled hit points because D&D Beyond will cover everything else with your Constitution modifier. But at this point, with one person, I don't have any reason to tell you to chat with other people and try to plan characters with them.
Right.
If you would like to create a character, go for it. If you want to wait and kind of see for some other people, um, in the long run, Jordan not showing up today is very disappointing. 2 people is again kind of the minimum to really do things. But for what it's worth, if you would like to create a character, we can certainly play around for a little bit here.
Um, yeah, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind making one pretty quick.
Gotcha. Were you still thinking about, I think earlier you said you had made a monk and a ranger?
Yes. Actually, I think I deleted the monk, but yeah, I was just kind of messing around with it. I made a dwarf barbarian too.
Excellent. Had you thought about what you would like to actually play through a campaign?
No, I haven't. I guess like what you said, with one person it's kind of hard, but with a group you could figure out, who's going to be what class or as far as that goes. Cuz I'm pretty open to playing, almost whatever.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I will often tell people: play what you want to play. Don't worry about actually filling out the quote unquote roles of a adventuring party. I think fifth edition kind of actually makes a lot of that a little bit more moot and kind of meaningless. But at the same time, I often try to remind people, especially low level, especially with beginners, that you can often kind of just fix anything that you feel like you've made a mistake on. You don't necessarily have to fully like recreate a character because you don't like the class that you've chosen, kind of thing. Like, but if you wanted to play a barbarian, that's an awesome choice. It will often mean that the rest of the party is going to be far safer in what might kind of come about, knowing that there is basically a very tough person who wants to be at the forefront of battles. Um, Same kind of thing, also, like if you are open to being like I tend to play support characters.
Hmm.
So picking any level of a support character, if that's the kind of thing that you like doing, um, they're one of those things where that kind of satisfies the same level of, oh, this is what a group really needs. Um, those are probably the two positions that are, again, like most common that you really actually have to fill out. Is um, it's not like often that you don't have some sort of person who wants to be a frontline fighter, uh, but it happens. And having people who know how to heal is one of the things that, if you
Oh
want
yeah.
to choose a class like a monk or a ranger, it can be very useful to make sure that your ranger takes access to a healing spell, or that your monk takes something that gives them the ability to heal, at very least prevent people from dying. Those are
Right.
some of the most important things for actually rounding out a party. Is like, if you want to be a wizard, I mean, pretty much any class. If you want to be any class who doesn't have access to healing, it might behoove you to pick the actual healer feat as soon as possible so you can heal people with that. Those are some of the big things that I think is where it really comes down to. Like, don't play something that you don't want to play because you think the party needs it. Play something that you want to play and perhaps modify it in a way that satisfies the fact that healing is something that a party will eventually need. But like fifth edition has short rests purely to avoid the fact that people need healing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I played Baldur's Gate 3. I know it's not exactly D&D, but I know it had the short rest and some other things like that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I mean, even at the best of times, video games give you a little feel for the dynamic. It's definitely not the same thing as the game, but
Right.
in the long run, it gives you at least a little like kind of teaser.
Hmm.
But yeah, like fifth edition effectively was trying to deal with the fact that people don't want to play a healer. Um, I like to remind people that clerics are not healers; they are warriors. Like I've played, one of my favorite characters I've ever played was a light cleric. That is a wizard who has access to cleric spells. I burned down the world on a regular basis with that character. They were a shitload of fun. Um, and I think it's actually to a lot of people's detriment that they still think of clerics as healers. I think I cast like two healing spells in a level 1 through 10 campaign. I pretty much never healed anybody. Um, it wasn't what I thought of as the fun part of this game, but I had access to it for when people were going down, and it was important to throw healing out there. And that's precisely what I think every character should find a way to be able to heal people.
Right.
Um,
Benefit the whole party.
yeah, you definitely don't want to count on a cleric to heal you, because if you're ever fighting intelligent foes, I will kill the cleric the moment they cast the healing spell, and it becomes clear that you can't hurt anybody else while that person can heal, so you kill the healer. And then you're like, oh, now you guys can't heal yourselves. That's one of those things where, and it's another thing. If the cleric is in the right part of the initiative, somebody can go down, and I'm going to kill that character before the cleric gets a chance to heal them. There's a lot of reasons that having healing on every character is very important if you're trying to avoid death. And
Right.
a lot of people are always like, oh, yeah, somebody will play the healer. Somebody will play the healer. Some of the coolest campaigns do not have healers.
It's good to know.
But yeah, that's where really like playing the class that you want to play is very important to do. And that's kind of feeling out like what you're actually looking to do. This campaign in particular takes place in like a small frontier town, and it's kind of immediate surroundings. It's a place that has kind of been forgotten in the last few hundred years, and it's just now kind of growing back into what it once was in the past. And among things that are kind of happening is there's a return of a few dragons in the area that are certainly becoming an actual threat, among other things. But it's kind of like a um, almost like exploring and resettling of this little area. A few things are available in town, but this is not like a magical campaign where you can like go into water deep and purchase any magical item that you might want to come across. It is not a campaign where there is a lot of access to healing potions. And besides that, healing potions are expensive. They are magical items, and it should be recognized like when you all get access to a potion, you kind of want to make sure to save this for the right time, usually to save somebody's life.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. What like what level does this campaign usually run to?
It's like 1 to 6. If we're playing like 2 hour sessions, again, I really wanted to actually have at least two people for running
Right.
the session zero. I don't know why Jordan kind of dropped out last minute. Um, but it generally like I wanted to offer this one on this date and time just to see, because a 2 hour session I feel like works well for a starter campaign, and it allows me to kind of like shuffle it in with my other games. But I wanted to see because this is kind of, again, it's like a primer to other things. If you enjoy playing in this game and this game doesn't really function, you could join one of my other games. You would just kind of start at a higher level. But like basically, this game is meant to be like 1 through 5, and you can play to 6 depending on like effectively spoilers. If you go to fight the dragon at the end, you're probably going to play till level 6. If everybody decides that they don't want to fight the dragon at the end, it usually ends at level 5.
Okay.
If the campaign went on beyond there, that's where I would say we need to jump to a 4 hour gaming slot and actually find out like, is there another time that this works? When it becomes a 4 hour game, that's where my like fee jumps up to $20 a session. And that's kind of like my more like traditional games are $20 for 4 hours of gaming.
Right. That makes sense. And so, like, I guess once this campaign ends, are those characters pretty much done, or do they move on to something else, or does it just depend, what the party wants to do? Or
That's kind of that same idea of like if the party wants to stick together and continue gaming past the intro campaigns, that's where it's that same idea of like if we keep going, we need to find a 4 hour gaming slot that works and continue playing them like that. In general, the way I think of characters is you are always welcome to replay a character. It doesn't mean that you're going to play the same character. The only way to play that actual same character is if the whole group kind of like solidifies behind like continuing the campaign on. Effectively it comes down to like are there 3 or 4 people who want to continue playing past level 5 or 6? If yes, awesome. Can everybody make a time during the week where they can continue to meet for 4 hours? If yes, awesome. If you end up like joining another campaign with the same character, you can have a lot of the things in mind, but that's where you kind of step into like a multiverse of um, we would have to discuss what actual items that you find in this campaign might your character have in this other world because they're not necessarily going to be the same. Like I've had players who joined some of my other campaigns with characters they played in like the intro campaigns, and it's basically um, like you kind of start with a relative amount of gold that the rest of the group kind of already has, um, and you a lot of games like I have either a lot less magical items or a lot more magical items. Um, a lot of the settings determine how kind of magically rich or magically sparse they kind of are. This one has quite a few magical items for what it ends up being. Very few potions. But like some of the other ones, there's a lot more magical items, but there's a lot less magical weapons. So it always just varies. It depends where a character goes, but you tend to kind of be on a, like a relative footing. It just matters what setting you go into.
right.
But effectively, the only way to stay with that exact same character is if the group continues on.
Okay. Yeah, that